My name is Mara Ellison, and for the last 4 years I have shared my nights with a soldier from another world. It began on the evening of October 17th, 2021, 3 months after the sky cracked open above the Pacific and the ships of the Kael Dominion arrived. The war that followed was short, brutal, and decisive. Humanity lost. The treaties were signed in Geneva, while mushroom clouds still cooled over what had been Los Angeles and Vladivostok. Most people call the new order the Accord. I call it the silence, because after the surrender the guns stopped and the screaming never did. I was 26 then, a junior cartographer for what remained of the Canadian Geological Survey. When the Dominion redrew the maps, my job vanished along with the borders. I drifted south, past the abandoned checkpoints on Highway 15, until I reached the rain-soaked outskirts of Portland, what was left of it. The city had become one of the free zones, a polite fiction meaning the Kael didn't bother policing it so long as no one fired on their patrols. Humans scraped by in the skeletal towers, trading canned peaches for antibiotics, telling themselves the war was over. I found an apartment on the 23rd floor of the Meridian building, a cracked concrete hive overlooking the Willamette. The elevator had died long ago. I climbed the dark stairs every night with a flashlight between my teeth and a kitchen knife in my hand. That was how I lived until the first time I saw him. It was past 2 in the morning. Rain hammered the broken windows I had sealed with plastic and duct tape. I had just fallen into the thin, exhausted sleep of the perpetually afraid when something moved on the fire escape. I woke with my heart already sprinting. Through the rippling plastic I saw a silhouette taller than any man, broad-shouldered, armored. The streetlights below were dead, but the low violet glow of Kael energy signatures outlined him. 7 feet of matte black plating, jointed like an insect. A long rifle cradled in arms that ended in 4-fingered gauntlets. A soldier. One of them. I reached for the knife on the milk crate I used as a nightstand. My fingers shook so badly I knocked it to the floor. The clatter sounded like gunfire in the quiet. The figure outside did not move. Rain slid off his helmet in sheets. A single line of pale blue light ran down the center of his faceplate, an eye, or something that served the same purpose. It regarded me for a long moment, then the soldier did something I will never forget. He knelt. One armored knee touched the rusted grating of the fire escape. He lowered his head, the way a knight in old stories bows to a lady. Then he raised his rifle, not at me, but outward, toward the darkness beyond the building. He settled into a guarding stance and remained there, motionless, while the storm raged around him. I did not sleep again that night. He returned the next night, and the next. Always the same hour, always the same posture. After a week I stopped reaching for the knife. After 2 weeks I left the window uncovered, so the rain wouldn't drum so loudly on the plastic. After a month I began to wait for the soft metallic scrape that meant he had arrived. I never saw him during the day. Kael warriors traveled in squads of 4 or more, their boots shaking the ground, their voices a low insectal chittering that made dogs whine blocks away. But my soldier came alone, cloaked in some stealth field that bent light around him until he chose to be seen. He never entered the apartment. He simply stood watch on the narrow balcony, scanning the rooftops and alleys with that violet glow. I started talking to him. At first it was only whispers, "Thank you," or "It's cold tonight." Then longer sentences, the way you speak to a cat that refuses to come inside but still rubs against your ankles. I told him about the world before the ships, about driving Highway 101 with the windows down and music loud enough to drown out everything. I told him how frightened I still was every single day. I never expected an answer. The Kael language sounds like tearing paper mixed with whale song. Even the translators embedded in the Accord loudspeakers can barely render it into anything human. One night in early spring, when the cherry trees along the river were foolish enough to bloom again, I opened the balcony door. The air smelled of wet petals and distant smoke. He turned his helmeted head a fraction. Acknowledgement, caution, I couldn't tell. "I don't even know your name," I said. The blue light on his visor pulsed once. A low harmonic thrummed through the metal floor into my bare feet. My cheap government translator bead buzzed against my collarbone and spoke in a flat male voice. Designation in your tongue would be Ket, Ket, I repeated. It felt too small for something so enormous. He inclined his head again, the same bow he had given the first night. I stepped aside. "You can come in. If you want. It's warmer." For a long time he did not move. Then, slowly, he folded himself through the doorway, forced to turn sideways so the curved plates of his shoulders would fit. He had to stoop. The ceiling was too low for him to stand upright. He smelled of ozone and something like crushed pine needles. He never sat. Kael, I later learned, do not have the same joint configuration. Their armor locks them into a perpetual half-crouch when indoors. Instead, he lowered himself to one knee in the center of my tiny living room, rifle across his thighs, and waited. I made tea on the single-burner hot plate. My hands shook only a little. I offered him a chipped mug. He regarded it the way a man might regard a thimble, then wrapped one gauntlet finger around the handle with impossible delicacy and held it without drinking. That was the night I learned he had been watching me long before I ever saw him. Ket was part of the 114th Suppression Cohort, assigned to pacify the Northwest Free Zone. His squad's orders were simple: locate and eliminate any human cells still possessing pre-surrender weaponry. On the third day of their sweep, they detected residual radiation from an old Army cache rumored to be hidden beneath the ruins of Washington High School. While the rest of the squad moved to investigate, Ket's helmet sensors registered a single human life sign 2 kilometers east, elevated, heart rate spiking in irregular bursts consistent with chronic terror. That was me, crying in my sleep. Kael military doctrine is brutally pragmatic. A single frightened civilian is irrelevant noise. Yet something in the pattern of my neural activity triggered a flag subroutine in Ket's combat implant, an experimental empathy protocol the Dominion had quietly installed in a handful of frontline soldiers after too many warriors began suffering what human doctors would call PTSD. The protocol was meant to identify civilians worth protecting, to reduce collateral trauma that might one day fuel another rebellion. I was the first match Ket's implant ever found. He deserted his squad that night. Desertion among the Kael is punishable by public dissolution, being lowered alive into a vat of acid while your hive siblings watch. Ket knew this. He came anyway. Over the following year our nights settled into ritual. I would read aloud from the few books I had salvaged: Orwell, Le Guin, an ancient field guide to Pacific Northwest mushrooms. Ket would listen without moving, only the faint pulse of his visor betraying that he understood. Sometimes he would touch the pages with one careful claw, tracing the letters as though they were holy. He began leaving gifts on the balcony: a Kael power cell that kept my hot plate running for months, a strip of smart fabric that hardened into body armor when I wore it, a single iridescent scale shed from his own neck during a molt. I sewed it into a pendant and never took it off. In return, I taught him small human things. How to make the perfect grilled cheese sandwich. He could not eat it, but the ritual delighted him. How to play chess with bottle caps, and a board I drew in chalk on the floor. He was terrible at it. He sacrificed pieces with reckless joy, laughing in that low harmonic thrum when I checkmated him for the 12th time. And always, every night without fail, he stood watch while I slept. There were close calls. Once a Dominion patrol traced an unauthorized energy signature to our building. Ket fought them on the roof, 4 against 1. Plasma blades screaming. I huddled in the stairwell, clutching the kitchen knife I no longer needed, listening to the sounds of armored bodies crashing through concrete. When it was over, he returned covered in his own silver blood, one arm hanging useless. I cleaned the wounds with vodka, and the only clean towel I owned. He let me. He had never let me touch him before. Another time, human scavengers decided the 23rd floor might have food. They came with guns. Ket disarmed them so quickly I barely had time to scream. He zip-tied them on the landing and left them for the Accord enforcers, but not before carving a warning sigil into the door, one only Kael would recognize. This dwelling is under my protection. Touch it and die. Years passed. The war became history. Children born after the surrender grew up thinking Violet Patrol lights were as natural as the moon. The Dominion began integrating pacified humans into low-level administrative roles. I was offered a job redrawing cadastral maps for the New Kael prefecture. I took it. The pay bought real glass for the windows and a mattress that didn't smell of mold. Ket and I never spoke of the future. There was only the present and the fragile space we had carved out inside it. Then came the night everything broke. It was late autumn, 4 years almost to the day since he first appeared. I came home from the cartography office exhausted. The Kael overseers had demanded impossible revisions to the coastline, erasing entire towns that no longer existed. Kael was already waiting on the balcony, but something was wrong. His armor was scarred with fresh burns. The blue light of his visor flickered erratically. He stepped inside without waiting for invitation and collapsed to both knees, something I had never seen him do. Silver blood pooled beneath him. "They found me," the translator said, the voice cracking with static. "The cohort. My desertion registered at last. I tried to stop the bleeding, pressing towels against seams that opened like gills. We'll run," I babbled. "There are still places." "No." His massive hand closed gently around my wrist. "The hive has marked this zone for cleansing. Any warrior who sheltered humans will be made example. They come at dawn. With fire." I understood then what he intended. He would stand on the balcony, one final time, and hold the entire cohort long enough for me to escape down the river. He would die so I could live. I kissed him. I had never kissed him before. There was no mouth beneath the helmet, only a smooth plate and that single blue eye. I pressed my lips to the cold metal anyway and tasted blood and rain. "You are not expendable," I told him. "Not to me." For a long moment, the only sound was his labored breathing through damaged filters. Then he reached up and, with trembling claws, unlatched his helmet. I had always imagined what a Kael looked like beneath the armor. I was wrong in every detail. His face was not insectal. It was almost avian, sharp beak-like structure, skin the color of wet ash, eyes like molten sapphire. A crest of soft black feathers lay flat against his skull. He was beautiful in the way a storm is beautiful. He touched my cheek with bare fingers, warm, leathery, trembling. "Mara Ellison," he said, and for the first time I heard his true voice, low, musical, like wind through cedar boughs. "In 4 years you never once asked why I stayed." I was afraid of the answer. The answer is simple. He leaned his forehead against mine, the way humans do. "Because every night, when you slept without fear, I remembered what we were fighting for before the Dominion forgot." He kissed me back. Careful, awkward, perfect. Then he stood, towering again, and sealed the helmet into place. The blue light steadied, fierce and unafraid. "Go now," he said. "Take the river south. There is a human settlement near Astoria still beyond their maps. I have left coordinates in the pendant." I was crying so hard I could barely see. "Come with me." "I am coming with you," he said. "Every step you take tonight, I will be the shadow that walks behind you. That is what protectors do." He opened the balcony door. Dawn was still hours away, but already the sky above the west hills glowed with approaching engines. I wanted to argue, to scream, to drag him bodily into the stairwell. Instead, I did the only thing I could. I put on the smart fabric jacket he had given me years ago. I hung the iridescent scale around my neck. And I walked out the door without looking back, because if I looked back I would never leave. I was on the 3rd floor landing when the first plasma mortar struck the top of the building. The explosion lit the stairwell white. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned and the river swallowed the sound of collapsing concrete. I ran until the sky behind me turned from violet to orange to the pale gold of morning. I never saw him fall. But every night since, when I close my eyes in whatever fragile refuge I have found, I feel the soft scrape of metal on the balcony that isn't there. I smell ozone and crushed pine needles. And I sleep without fear, because somewhere, in whatever place soldiers go when the battle is finally over, there is an alien warrior standing watch. He protected me every night. He protects me still.